Mitzvah today we'll be learning Daf Ches Amud Aleph, but in order to be able to learn Daf Ches Amud Aleph, I think it'd be very useful if we recap some of the Gemaras which we learned before on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Amud Beis. It would probably be very useful if we're able to picture a Mavui. Let me just say this. The Gemara on Daf Zayin was discussing Mavui Hamfulish. And so we're speaking about whether certain situations, whether they will classify as a Mavui Hamfulish or not. And this is one of the scenarios which the Gemara discusses, whether it will classify as a Mavui Hamfulish. So let us picture a scenario of a side street where you have residential on both sides of the street. You have residential buildings and chatzeres, and of course, both sides of the side street, as usual, they are fenced off. They have certain entrances to go into the residential areas, but both side streets are residential areas with buildings there, and there is a fence running along both sides. Then we have the front of the Mavui that is open to Rosh Hashanah. And over there, of course, we will put a lechi or a kaira. Now, on the back of the Mavui, we also have a fence. But that fence on the back of the Mavui was open, that fence at the back of the Mavui was backed to a front yard, a front garden, or a back garden. In other words, the whole area, and more than the whole area of the back wall of the Mavui is on the other side of the wall is a garden. Could either be a back garden or a front garden. And let's picture that garden is longer than the area of than the length of the back wall of the Mavui. What happened was that this wall, the back wall of the Mavui, fell down. So now we have an opening at the back wall of the Mavui. So we have two sides of the Mavui, which is normal, and the front, which is a regular Mavui facing Shus Rabim, and the back, where the wall has fallen down, Nifras. Now we have this garden, which is behind behind the back of the Mavui. The gardens we can have it could be either a front garden of a house, or it's a back garden of a house. Now, if it's a front garden of a house, we would call it a chotzer, and a chotzer is a place which is used. The people who live in the house, they use a chotzer. If it's a back garden of a house, so the back garden of the house is not really being used by the residents. So since it's not used by the residents, it's not really, people are not residing there. And they may have ownership of it, which might be discussed later. But so therefore the people are not, that's how the Seder was in those days, that people would not be using very much at all. They would not be using the back garden, and therefore it's not considered they're residing in the back garden. Only in the front garden, chotzer, which that was mainly used, and that was the main use of the garden. That's what was used mainly, and they were considered residing. Now, if that back garden, if that garden which is at the back of the Mavui is a back garden. So since nobody's residing there, they do not have to participate in making the shituf mavois with the rest of the Mavui, because there is a din of shituf mavois, which is that all the chatzeres which open up into the Mavui, so besides that the houses, the people who live in the houses in each chatzer have to make an eruv for all the houses in that particular chatzer. All the chatzeres also have to make a shitufei mavois, which is with bread and so on, which that's to be ma'arev, to make them all like one, to enable them to carry. So that's what you have to do. You have to make this shituf mavois. Now, if you have a garden which opens into the mavui, and there's no residence there, that garden doesn't need to participate. It's only the people where people are residing. So therefore, if the garden which is at the back of the mavui is a back garden, so that's a non-residential garden, it doesn't have to participate with the shitufim mavais. But if it's a front garden, it does have to participate in to make an eruv with the rest of the mavui. If it does not participate, so one is still unable to carry in the mavui, because in order to be able to carry the mavui, besides having the lech and the kara, each of the chatzeres need to participate in this shitufei mavos eruv. So, therefore, it works out that as regarding the din of making the eruv, the shitufei mavos eruv, so if it's a back garden or a front garden which has an eruv, which they participated, it will have the same halacha, because if it's just to repeat, if it's the back garden, then they do not need to be mishtatev in the shitufei mavos. If it's a front garden and they were mishatev in the shitufei mavos, again, so therefore the people can carry in the mavui. But if it's a front garden which was not mishtatev with the area with the rest of the people in the mavui, so then that garden would cause that they should not be able to carry in the mavui. So it's three scenarios with two dinim. A chotzer, which is a front garden, which made an eruv, is the same din as a rechava, which is the back garden, and then you have the second din, which is a chotzer, which is a front garden, which did not make an eruv for the rest. But now, like we said before, that the main halacha, which we're really discussing here, is about mavui hamfulish. So we have both in Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Daf Zayin Amud Beis, we speak about that at the back of the mavui we have this chotzer or rechava, as we spoke. Now, that chotzer and rechava also the chotzer and rechava has 4 fences around it. Obviously, that's normal, like in the chotzer, has 4 fences around it. Now, so there's one break happened because the wall of the mavui fell down, and then there is the scenarios of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Amud Beis is that that opposite that wall which fell, the wall of the mavui which fell down, there was another break in the other wall, and that break leads to a reshus harabim. So let's imagine that we have this garden behind the mavui, and it has 4 walls, but there are 2 breaks in the walls. One is where the back wall of the mavui stood, and opposite it, the wall there is also opened up, and you can see the reshus harabim. So now, when we're dealing with these scenarios of the garden behind the mavui, there are 2 issues which you need to take into account. One is the mavui, because now that you can see from the mavui straight into the reshus harabim, is the mavui now considered the mavui foolish? Because you have the front end of the mavui which is facing reshus harabim, and now it does not face the reshus harabim, but but you can see to the reshus harabim. So since you can see from the mavui straight into the reshus harabim, and there is no fencing at the back of the mavui at all to suggest that there is a Pesach there, there's no fencing. So therefore, because it's been broken down, so therefore, as far as if a person standing in the mavui, to him it seems that the mavui is a mavui hamafulish. Okay, it goes through an area of somebody's garden, but it's a mavui hamfulish. That's what it seems to him, the way he sees it. So is this mavui considered a mavui hamfulish? And the other issue, which we also will take into account, is whether this chotzer needs to participate, make an eruv, or does not need to make an eruv. Because if it needs to make an eruv and it didn't make one, then people in the mavui also will not be able to carry. So this chotzer can prevent people in the Mavi carrying if it doesn't participate, if it needs to participate, making the Eruvin didn't. Of course, I need to mention that the chotzer itself is a chotzer. And therefore, since the rechava, whatever it is, so the garden, there's no questions about the garden, because the garden does actually have 4 mechitzas. And I mentioned before that the area of the garden is much bigger than the break of the back wall of the Mavi, which fell down. And therefore, if a person is standing in the garden, they see 4 mechitzas around them. And provided that the walls are not more than 10 amas, so then the breaks, which they have a mechitza, each break has a mechitza on both sides. Since they see 4 walls, okay, 2 of them have breaks in it, but a wall which has a break in it, if the break is less than 10 amas, so that break is considered a Pesach. So therefore, as far as the chotzer is concerned, there's a Pesach leading to the Mavi, and there's a Pesach leading to the Shus Rabbim. So you have a chotzer with a Pesach, that's fine, you can carry in the chotzer. So the chotzer has no problems. The problems are in the Mavi, and then the 2 issues need to be dealt with. That is, one, whether it's considered the Mavi and foolish, and the other one, whether it needs to have, whether it needs to have an Eruv with the back garden. The people of the people of the garden over there need to participate in the Eruv with the rest of the Bali Mavi. So we had this halacha, which was on Dam Zion, when Rav said that if it's if the back of the Mavi is open to a rechava, like you said, if it's open to rechava, so it said there's no problems. So the Mavi can just continue as it's before. So the people in the Mavi can totally ignore that the break that there is in the rechava and the break that there is in the other side of the rechava, of the garden, the break on the 2 sides of the garden. So the break on the 2 sides of the garden, they can be the people in the Mavi completely ignore it. So that's what we had on Dav Zion. In other words, so this is a statement by Rabbi Huda, said Rav. It's a statement of Rabbi Huda. And the statement of Rabbi Huda means 2 things. That first of all, there is no issue of Mavi and foolish, even though the people in the Mavi can see straight through to the Rishus Rabbim in the back of the Mavi. That doesn't make it the Mavi and foolish, even. And that's one thing. And also, because we're speaking about Rechava, mentioned before, Rechava does not need to be mishtatef in the Shituf in the was. So therefore, as far as the people in the Mavi are concerned, the fact that the wall of the Mavi has fallen down in the back and now it's open for both sides of Rishus Rabbim, life goes on as normal. They don't need to change anything, just continue carrying. That was the halacha on Daf Zayin on the Daf. On Daf Chesam and Aleph. Before I go to Daf Chesam and Aleph, just to say that we will later in the Gemara discuss concerning Mavi and foolish the certain opinions that if we just said now there's no problem of Mavi and foolish. That's how we said. Even though you can see straight through from the Mavi to both the Rishus Rabbims, we say there's no problem of Mavi and foolish. There will be later in the Gemara today, we will speak about that. Some people will say that if they see straight through without any blockages, then it's not really considered the Mavi and foolish. They must see some blockage. If it's mamish straight through, there is going to be an opinion of Rabbi that if you see straight through, then it would be considered the Mavi and foolish. But right now we're not there at all. There. Right now we're speaking about you see straight through. It's still not considered the Mavi and foolish. Okay. Now we have this din, and that is on Daf Zayin on the base. Omar Rav Mavi shenifritz b'miloy lechotzer v'nifritz lechotzer keneg the chotzer materes Mavi also. We have this din that Rav said. This is the name of Rav. that a mavui which was broken to a chotzer. Now let's remember, chotzer is a front garden. So it's a broken. So the wall between the front garden and the mavui and the back of the mavui has been broken. So it says the chotzer you're allowed to carry, but the mavui is also to carry. So it's not permitted to carry the mavui. In the end, the conclusion of the Gemara on Daf Zion, the conclusion of the Gemara on Daf Zion on Beis was that here we're not speaking about the issue of Mov and Fulish, that the conclusion of the Gemara on Daf Zion on Beis is that Rav is not worried about Mavi and Foolish. And what's the reason that he can't carry the Mavi? Because the people in the Chotzer did not make an Erev. That is the conclusion on Daf Zion Amud Beis. Again, that this halacha, that the Mavi is also to carry, is only because of the problem of they didn't make an Erev with the rest of the Mavi. But the fact that they can see through, that is not an issue. That was the end of the Gemara on Daf Zion. But the beginning of the Gemara on Daf Zion and Beis, the Gemara understood that the problem is because of Mav and Foolish, and there's reasons for it in the Dia Kaloshin, whatever. So in the beginning on the Gemara on Daf Zion and Beis thought that the reason why you can't carry the Mavi is because it's considered Mav and Foolish. And that's why the Gemara said that there's a machlekes between Rav and the din of Rabbi Huda of the Rechava, which was said by Shmuel. So the Gemara decided in the beginning on Daf Zayin and Beis that this din which Rav says that the Mavi is aser, and is not worried. And sorry, the reason why the Rav said that Mavi is aser, the reason why Rav said, wait a second. Right. The reason why Rav said Mavi is also is not like in the conclusion because it has to do with the Erev. No, that's not the problem. The problem is because of Mav and Foolish. So in the beginning, let me just repeat that with clarity's sake. That in the beginning of Daf Zayin and Beis, we thought that Rav, when he said that the Mavi is also, is nothing to do with the fact that there's a problem with the Erev. That's not the problem. Because he thinks you don't need the Erev, but the reason why it's also is because of it's considered a Mav and Foolish, and therefore since the reason of why it's also is because it's considered Mav and Foolish, so that would mean that this statement of Zion on Beis argues with the statement of Rabbi Huda on Daf Chesed Amud Aleph, which says that it's not considered a Mav and Foolish. Because on Daf Chesed Amud Aleph we had the Rechava, and we said there's no problem with Mav and Foolish. So in the Havamina we thought that there's two statements contradict each other, and one is Rav and one is Shmuel, and they argue with each other. So according to Shmuel, there would be a problem of an Erev. If there's a Chatzar, there would be a problem of an Erev, but there's no problem of Mavi and Foolish. And according to Rav, there is a problem of Mavi and Foolish. There's no problem because of the Erev. Okay, so now we'll go to the Gemara of Chesed Amud Aleph. Olmai the solik adaitin ikoro. So the Gemara says, according to what we had the Salk night at the beginning, so one wants to understand the Havamina, wants to understand what was the reasoning of the Havamina, which is the beginning of Zayin Amud Beis. Olmai the Salk adaitin ikoro bein she'ir bein shelei iri pligi, that the machlok is between Rav and Shmuel is because we said that the two members, one is Rav, one is Shmuel. So they're arguing whether there is an Erev or whether there's no Erev. In other words, that if there's no Erev, there's an argument whether whether you need to have whether it is an argument if there's no Erev, if that's a problem. In fact, there's no Erev, it's a problem. Does the Chotzer then make it Osir on the Movi because they're not starting the Erev? And also that even if you didn't make an Erev, there's a machlokes whether it's considered a Movi foolish or not. So, but my plea. So what exactly is the argument? What's the reasoning behind the argument? So the Gemara says, firstly, the Gemara does one time. So what is the argument? Now, if we're talking about a case where there's no Erev, so the Chotzer, you had a Chotzer there, there's no Erev. And they argue that according to Rav, he doesn't need an Erev there. According to Shmuel, you do need to have an Erev. I mean to say that you need to be mishtatev with the Mavui. So if there's no Erev, if there's no Erev there, so according to Shmuel, you would need to be mishtatev with the rest of the Mavui, and according to Rav, you would not need to be mishtatev with the rest of the Mavui. So what's the argument? Why they do need to mishtatev or not mishtatev? So the Gemara explains the nira b'chutz v'shavim b'fnim. Sorry, pligi b'nira b'chutz v'shavim b'fnim. What are they arguing? Because I mentioned before that the chotzer really, if you're standing in the chotzer, you have just two psachim. You have one entrance to Shus Rabim, and the other entrance you have to the Mavui. So therefore, if you have an entrance to the Mavui, so that's if you have an entrance to the Mavui, so the person is standing in the garden, which is the back of the Mavui, he has mechitzas all around. Now, this the entrance between the Mavui and the back garden of the Mavui and the back garden. So if you're standing in the back garden, you see mechitzas. Why? Because even though you see a break where the wall fell down, by the fact that you see the mechitzah before and after it, so therefore it's considered a Pesach. So mibachutz, if you're outside the Mavui, you're standing in the back garden, you see a Pesach. Now inside, if you're standing inside the Mavui, since the whole wall fell down, didn't leave any remnants, you don't see, it's Shavah B'fnim, you don't see the Pesach. Now, is that considered a Pesach for the Mavui as well? For the person standing in Shus Yochid, considered the Pesach, it's not a problem. But for the person, for the people who are standing in the Mavui, is that considered a Pesach? So therefore, and that's the machlokes. So therefore, the person who says, let's see, Rav, who says that you don't have to worry about being mishtatev in the Erev, because it's a mechitza. Okay, if you stand on one side, you don't see the mechitza. Stand on the other side, you see the mechitza. So it's a good mechitza. I mean, it's a good Pesach. The Pesach you see on one side and not on the other side. Doesn't matter. But it's a Pesach. We see one side of it, the other side you don't see. It's the Therefore, it's considered a Pesach even for the Bnei Avon. That's why, since it's considered a Pesach, also for the people standing in the Mavui, even they don't actually see any shape of a Pesach there, but since it's considered a Pesach, so therefore the Mavui won't aser on the Chotzer won't make it aser on the Chotzer won't make it aser on the Mavui, because since there's a Pesach between the Mavui and the Chotzer, it won't make it aser, especially if it's not a regular, it just broke down, it's only temporary. So since it's only temporary, it will not, and there's a Pesach there, you'll be able to carry in the Mavui. Mashe'en ken Shmuel will hold, since, okay, understand, if you're standing in Shus Yochid, in the back, in the garden, the back, you see a fence. You see a Pesach, therefore it means it's all a fence. But if you're standing in the Mavui, you don't see a Pesach. But since you don't see a Pesach, as far as the Mavui is concerned, it's no Pesach. And therefore, since there's no Pesach there, so therefore there's no dividing between the garden and the back of the Mavui. Therefore, they need to participate in the Erev, even though it's only for temporary form. Okay. So that is the reason whether you would need to be mishtafet or not. That's be a machlekes. Then also the Eruvin can be fleet. And what happened? But we said before that the argument between Rav and Shmuel, between the two brises of Zayin and Aleph, not the two members of Zayin and Aleph and the Zayin and Beis, they also argue whether it's considered a movem foolish. So Be'irva is, even though there will be mishtaf, okay, the mishtaf, but then there's the issue of the foolish. So, and they argue. So one considers it a movem foolish. The Zayin and Beis considers it a movem foolish because you can see all the way through. And the Zayin and Aleph does not, which is Shmuel, does not consider movem foolish. What are they arguing? They're arguing Rabbi Yosef said, Lo Shonu, this heter, which there is, we said there's a heter, that it's not considered a movem foolish. That the Zayin and Aleph, we said that even though you can see through to the street, it's not considered a movem foolish. When is it saying that it finishes in the middle of the garden. There's a garden, and therefore the shikola and the mavui, the street, the wall is when it fell wet, which fell down. It's in the middle of the garden. But if the mavui ends the tzidei rechava to the side of the garden, in other words, that there is the fence, there's no when you come in from the mavui into the garden, there's no bit of fence on both sides. On one side, let me explain something. Now, if you look, when it comes to the side of the rechava, if the mavui was positioned to the side of the rechava, which means that when the wall broke open, when the back wall fell down, so the side of the mavui, the wall of the side of the mavui, just continued because it was also happened to be the side, the other mechitza of the back garden. Just trying to see how to say it. If you're walking from the mavui into the back, through the back of the mavui from the mavui, if you're walking from the mavui into the back of the mavui over the fallen wall, when you walk into the fallen wall, so you have to your right and to your left. So if it's the broken in the middle of the wall, so to your right, you have a wall of the mavui still continuing to your right. To the right, there is space to the right, and to the space to the left, beyond the limitations of the mavui. There's space to both sides. But if the whole mavui was to the side of the rechava, that means that when you're walking from the mavui into the rechava, into that chotzer, so to the right, you have a lot of area because that's much longer than the mavui, but to the left, to the left, there's no extra in the mavui. The wall to the left of the chotzer, to the left as you enter, that wall to the left of the mavui is a straight wall with the rest of the wall of the mavui. So then it's also. I hope I explained myself clearly now. So then it's also. Why is it also? The reason why it's also is because it seems much more like a movem foolish, because one of the walls you can actually see straight on as it continues straight into the street, because as you walked from the mavui into the chotzer, so the wall, the whole wall of the left wall of the mavui, which was running, then it continued on and changed from mavui. It became the left wall of the chotzer, and it goes straight into the Rosh Hashanah. So it's there's a straight wall, and therefore it seems much more like a movem foolish. Whereas if the mavui had was only into the center of this garden, and therefore it doesn't seem so much like a movem foolish. The kitzur hadvarim. So in other words, so what is the machlokes? The question is, what is the machlokes? How come one person says it's considered movem foolish? One person said we're talking about the garden at the back is not considered movem foolish. We're talking about that the case of when the mavui broke through into the center of the garden. So it broke into the center of the garden. is that considered? And that's the two members will argue whether we say it looks like a mavoi foolish, because standing in the mavoi, I can see the shirab from both sides, so therefore it looks like a mavoi foolish. Or you say no, that since if you walk out, you see that there is a garden there and there is extension from both sides, whatever. So therefore, it's not considered like a mavoi foolish. Therefore, you can carry in the mavoi. Rashi uses the word merzik mavoi. It looks like a mavoi foolish. Of course, it's not a proper mavoi foolish because you can carry in the Rosh Hashanah there. You can carry, so it's not proper mavoi. But whether it looks like a mavoi foolish and whether it'll be awesome. Okay, that's that. So we have now explained what the Hava Mina was before, but in the Hava and Davzayin Amid base. But the Maskana in Davzayin Amid base was that there's no machlekes. The Maskana in Davzayin Amid base was there's no machlekes between Rav and Shmuel, and everything is Rav, and there is no issue of Mavam Fush. So this is, we explained the Hava Mina. But in the end, the maskana is there is no problem of Mavam foolish. If you have this this garden which is at the back of the Mavi, there's no problem of Mavam foolish, even though it does open up into the Rosh Hashanah. Right. So there's no problem of Mavam foolish. The only problem which might be is if you didn't make an Eruv, you have to make an Eruv. That's the maskana. Now, Omar Rabbi. So Rav Yosef, when he learned this halacha, he said, you know what, this whole thing which said there's no problem of foolish, that is if the break in the garden from the side of the Mavi and the break from the side of Shirabim are opposite each other. So and therefore you see straight through. From the Mavi you see straight through. Omar Rabbi, Hod Amas Le'emser Chav Mutter, that if it goes loya moron, that would say that it's mutter, even when it's in the center, which Rabbi Yosef said it's mutter. He's being mach. He says, that's only if the two breaks are not opposite each other. Also, if the break from the garden to the Rosh Hashanah is not opposite the break from the Mavi to the garden. So therefore, it doesn't look so much like a Mavi foolish. Even though it is, some people actually walk through because they'll walk from here to there. They'll walk through. They use the garden as a place to walk through. But nevertheless, you can see it. You can see it visibly. It's not a Mavam foolish. That's what Rabbi said. He's machmir. Rabbi Yosef said no. He said it's okay, even though it looks like a Mavam foolish. The point it's not a Mavam foolish. So it's mutter. But Rabbi's machmir says also. Okay, now comes Reb Misharshir. So Amar Rav Shai is being machmir even more. He says, you, Rabbi, said that if it's visibly not a mavam foolish, so this is visibly not a mavam foolish, it doesn't look like a mavam so much, even though people are going through, but you can see it doesn't look like a straight through. So you say that then we don't have to worry about mavam foolish because it's not a real mavam foolish because it's a chotzer there. It's a chotzer, it's not a mavam. It's loya moron elo rechava de rabbim. Only if it's a rechava de rabbim. If that rechava, which that back garden which is there, belongs to the public. However, rechava de yochid, if it's privately owned, so I'm worried that we should not permit them to carry in the mavi. Why? Because I'm worried that if it's privately owned, somebody will come and he will build some stuff there, and then it will come up that the side of the mavu he'll build up in the garden, he'll add some buildings in the garden, and then it will work out that the wall of the garden follows straight through to the wall of the mavu. That it'll be like that will be like the case which Rabbi Yosef said that l'tzider rechava. It will stop being l'emtzer rechava. The garden will become a bit smaller because they'll build there in the garden, and therefore the mavi will end up will end up entering the rechava at the side of the rechava, not the emtzer rechava, and then that's also. So, and we don't worry if it's a public thing. We're not worried about it. But it's a yachid, he'll just go ahead and build it, and the people in the mother will be unaware and just continue carry till now, till now. Okay, so this he's come up with quite a significant chumrah. He says even though now be'emes is kosher, but if it's privately owned, we've got to worry they all of a sudden do a building and he'll make the houses line up as a continuum of the wall of the mavui, and then it will be a straight line which will go, and then it will look like a mavui foolish with it will look like a mavui foolish, okay, with which is a bit crooked. It doesn't matter, but it looks like a crooked mavui foolish. Mavui okum is also can be a mavui foolish. We had that before. Okay. Zim de milach leya ubani lo batim v'havlik avachov the yochid zim de milach leya. It changes mind. Ubani lo batim v'havlik movish kol lo tzedachov. Also. Right. And it will be the problem, like I said, will be because it will become like a mavui okum, like we had before. We learned about the mavui okum. According to Rav, it's considered foolish, even though it turns a corner. But yeah. So the Gemara says, "Not tamer of the shana ben rechav the Rabbi rechav the yachid." Where do you know there's a difference in rechav the Rabbi and rechav the yachid? The Omer of Eruvin bar Rav Adar Omer of Yitzchak says, bring a raya that we should be choishes. Well, all of a sudden, be choishes that person will come and build up such change. Are we really choishes for such things that changes will happen and people will be unaware? I mean, it's quite far stretched. So we see that the Gemara is bringing a raya that we do it. We are choishes. Things will happen. Now, what's the story? Ma'aseh Mavoi Echad was a story with the Mavoi Echad Shetzidei Echad called Yam. One side was the sea, and so the sea was on one side. So it didn't have a mechitza on one side because it wasn't necessary, because the sea was, I guess, a bit of a cliff edge there, not too much, a bit of a cliff edge, which was 10 tefachim. So you had the mechitza by the side of the sea. The sea was 10 tefachim lower. So you had the mechitza there. The tzidei echad kol ashpa, and then the other side, you had opposite that, you had the garbage, and that garbage was quite high, was more than 10 tefachim. So it was so 10 tefachim or more. So therefore, you had mechitza on both sides of this mavui, and I guess the people lived at the back of the mavui. That's where the people live. Okay, so fine. So you had this mavui which has these semi-natural mechitzas on two sides of it. Rabbi, and Shiloh came to Rabbi, it didn't want to say, it didn't say, not a het, it didn't say anything. Not a het, not the isa. It didn't say it's also the kind of mechitzas. There's mechitzas. You have the three mechitzas. You have the back of the mavui, which I guess the houses were there and everything. So that was those mechitzas. Then you have the sea, and you have the ashpe. So the mechitzas. Of the het chashina shemet not ashpe b'yala hayam sirt. Okay, so there was two things which he was chayshes. So because even though you have mechitzas, but the ashpe, there's a problem. Maybe it will clear out the ashpe, and then people will forget about it, and they'll continue carrying. If you allow them to carry now, so somebody will come, the ashpe decide to move away the ashpe, so that mechitza will get lost. The mechitza will get lost. So missing the mechitza, and people continue carrying. Or the sea. Also, maybe the sea might end up bringing sand and other stuff, and so therefore, all of a sudden the mechitza won't be there because it'll add up the sand, and therefore the distance will become much further away. There won't be mechitza. That's it. It's 10 tefachim, the mechitza to the sea. But all of a sudden it'll become an open area because there'll be half a kilometer or whatever it is of sediment piling up, and it'll become a flat area because the sea naturally in certain areas makes it flat and adds land to it. So the land will become bigger and it will stop being a mechitza. So that's the two chashas, and therefore he didn't want to say ahead. And people will continue carrying. He wants to carry. And the Rabbi said carry, no. So that's why. So anyway, and the shaila is so we see that it was worried maybe the ashba will taken away. So the Gemara says, and are we choishes that the ashba will be taken away, the garbage will be taken away? But now we learn the Mishnah, ashba b'shus rabin b'goy yutfachim. If you have an ashba with b'shus rabin, which is 10 tefachim high, so chaloin shal gaba. So if somebody has a window which opens up, and he can throw things from the window to the ashpa to land it. So he wants to throw out some garbage. So the garbage is 10 tefachim high to shus hayachid. His house is a shus hayachid. So he wants to throw from his house to the shus hayachid, and since it's in the middle between the chaloin and the thing, it's higher. It's high. It's more computer because even the Rishus Rabim, it's underneath. It's not higher than 10 tefachim. The Rishus Rabim doesn't go higher than 10 tefachim. So in other words, you have a chaloin, and then you have a more computer, and it's going to land on something which is 10 tefachim high. So then is chaloin shal gaba zerik l'b'shabbos. You could throw from the stuff from the house onto the garbage over there. Because there's no Rishus Rabin there, and it's going through a mokum tur. So bekitzer. So we don't worry that maybe he'll take away the ashpin, and then he'll end up throwing there anyway, and he'll end up going into Rishus Rabim. He'll take away the ashpin from there. So what do we see? So we see don't worry about taking out the ashpin. So what's the difference? So it depends which type of ashpin. If it's an ashpin, the Rabim ashpin the yochid. Alma shoni ben ashpin the ashpin yochid. So we see, because of these two dinim, which are a stereo to each other, we see that sometimes ashpas we are worried will disappear, sometimes not. If it's a yochid, we're worried it will be taken away, and if it's a rabbi, we're not worried it will be taken away. Is hachenami shoni ben rechov the rabbi and rechov the yochid. That's the rechov the rabbi and rechov the yochid. So the rechov the yochid, he might become enterprising and he will start building more houses, properties, and things like that. But for the rabbi, I guess it's much less likely that the rabbin will start, making changes in the landscape. That's what we see from over here. The chashash of making changes in the landscape is much more we bring a raya from a ashbel, we bring a raya to the person building houses. Yeah. So he's using that as a raya, even though not everybody agrees with this is Rabbi Sharshia. But Rabbi Sharshia, the Rabbi Sharshia, he brought a raya from Ash, but just like we can see that they can change the landscape over here, we should worry about changing. We should, and Rabbi was worried. Rabbi was worried about them changing the landscape. This is just like Rabbi was worried about changing the landscape with the ashpa. So I also think we should worry. That's what Rabbi Shashi says, that maybe they will build houses in the garden if it's privately owned. But Rabbi, we're not worried about them changing the landscape. The Gemara is now asking this din, which was said about what's it called, about the worry about changing the landscape and all that. So one was, it says Rabbi didn't want to be matir, didn't want to ask. What was the Rabbanon's opinion on this? Is it mutter also Rabbanon mai? Amar Rabbi Yosef bar Dimi. Amar Rabbi Yosef bar Dimi. Tana, we learned Chachamim Eisrin. So the Rabbi didn't want to say not Israel, not Heter, and we learned in the Brisa, according to Rabbi Yosef bar Dimi, we learned in the Brisa that the Chachamim say it's also. Amar Rav Nachman halacha de Chachamim that it's also. Yeah, so again, so it's also, and because we are worried about changing the landscape, that's it. Ikad Amri, Amr Rabbi Yosef Rav Dimi, Tona Chacham Matirin. There's a different version that says that Rabbi Yosef Rav Dimi, he learned in the Brisa, the Chachamim said it's mutter. They did not worry about changing the landscape. And okay, so the Chacham did not worry about changing the landscape. Amar Rav Nachman, Ein halacha de Chacham. So Rav Nachman said that Allah is not like Chacham. So Rav Nachman, he was machmir. In other words, Nachman, he was worried about, he passed that we should worry about the change of the landscape. So, right. So if with Chacham were Asa, he agreed with Chacham. Chacham were Matir, he did not agree with Chacham because he was worried about that it could be a change in the landscape. Meremer, Pasik Lola Surah, but Ozli. Omar, Hashino Shema Yala Hayom Shirtin. Right. So Meremer is in Surah, which is next to the sea. So Surah, the city of Surah, is next to the sea. I wonder where it is exactly. Is it to the south of Iraq? It's next to the sea, it says. Anyway, it's next to the sea. So he did not rely on the sea as being a mechitza. He did not rely on the sea as a mechitza, and therefore he made it. It told the people to make nets at the back of on the side of the mavoi, whatever it was. He told them to make nets at the side of the mavoi to make a fencing. So he made a fencing out of nets because he was worried of the chashash of Shema Yilam Sirtas. Again, you see here that he's machmir like Rav Nachman. That's what it seems. Yeah. Okay. Another din. There was this crooked mavoi in Surah. Now we learned before that if you have a crooked mavoi, that the crooked mavoi would mean that the mavoi is like is a shape of an L shape. So if you have the mavoi an L shape, so then we have machlokes Rav and Shmuel whether it's considered a mavoi foolish or mavoi sos. That was we learned before. So Koruch Budya, they wrapped a mat over there, a silver bakmusi. So in the where it bends, where the turn is in the L shape, where the turn is over there, because essentially you can either say it's just sorry, I did not explain well enough. The Mavi Oku means the Mavi is in the shape of an L. And both ends of the L, they open up to Rosh Hashanah. So the machlokes in Rav and Shmuel, whether each the Mavi is considered each Mavi, since the Mavi doesn't face directly to Rosh Hashanah, it's considered a three-sided Mavi, or is it considered a Mavi, a two-sided Mavi? Because at the end of the day, you can't walk from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah. And if you say it's considered a Mavi foolish, so besides having the lechi at each entrance of the Mavi, at each entrance to this L-shaped Mavi, you would also need to make Suras HaPesach by the bend of the L shape. You would need to make it Suras. So the way to make it kosher, if according to Rav, is to make a Suras HaPesach by the bend of the L shape, even though it holds a Mavi foolish. Once you make a Suras HaPesach, it's okay. Here and there, they put a mat over there. Rav Chizda says, this is not Rav is not Shmuel. The Rav, the Amat Roskim foolish. According to Rav, he says it's foolish. Tzuras HaPesach boy. You need to have a Tzuras HaPesach. So putting a mat there is standing up. A mat, obviously. They made the mat standing up. So they made the mat standing up. So that's not Tzuras HaPesach. You need to have a proper Tzuras HaPesach, which means you need to have two posts and a beam above. The Shmuel, the Amat Rosikim Kesosum, the according to Shmuel that says it's Sosum, but even according to Shmuel that says it's Sosum, the way we learned earlier, Pshat in the Gemara over there, you need to have at that bend in the L shape, you still need to have a lech. So again, that even according to Shmuel, it says Pirosik Sosum, that's considered Sosum. Nevertheless, in the bend of the L shape, you need to have lech. That's how we learned Pshat. We learned the previous in the Gemara. So hani mini lechi mal, you need to have a proper bird. Hi kim the nosher bezike v'shodilei lav klumi. You put up this mat, but the wind will blow and just knock it down. So therefore, it's not considered. It's not even a lechi. So he says v'in knows basichte v'chavre chavre. But if you knock it in with nail, Okay, once you make it sturdy, you knock it in with nails, it's going to stay there. Then it's considered it would be good at least as a lechi. It won't be a tzuras hapesach, it will be a lechi, and it will be kosher according to Pidyon of Shmuel. Gufa, we learned before. So this is coming back to the din which we have Zayin and base. And Gufa Omer Rav Yima Bar Rava Omer Rav Mov which nifts b'nul l'chotzer. So this is again this din, which the mov which this mov which breaks into I think yeah okay I'll trust trying it. This mov which breaks into a chotzer, the nifts a chotzer kenegdoi, and this mavui which the mavui which the fencing or the mavui fell into the chotzer which is behind it. And again you have the chotzer also has an opening to the Rishus Rabim. So that's the case which we learned before. Chotzer muteres and mavui also. So this chotzer has two entrances, one to Rishus Rabim and one to the mavui. So the chotzer is mutter to carry because, like I said before, it has mechitz all around. It has psachim. The mavui is aser. Only Rabbi bar Ula Rabbi bar Abaya. He asked. So Rabbi bar Ula asked Rabbi bar Abaya, Rabbi, why do we have to? Why did Rav have to say this halacha? It's a mishnah. What's the mishnah? Chotzer ketana shniptzel l'gdoila, gdoila muteres ketana asura. You have a big chotzer and you have a small chotzer, and the next to each other, and the small chotzer takes up it's a neighbor to the big chotzer, but it's only partial. The chotzer, the small chotzer only takes up part of the wall it's only a neighbor and part of the wall with a big chotzer. So and that wall fell down. So the wall of the small chotzer fell down. So the big chotzer still has 4 walls, but the ketana has only 3 walls. Now, do they need to make an eruv in order to be able to carry? Because once the wall is broken down, so there's no walls between between chetzeres. If you have a chotzer, 2 chetzeres, and the wall falls down, so you need to have an eruv. You can't carry unless you have an eruv. If you have a pesach, then you are able to carry because then it's 2 separate chetzeres. As if I have a chotzer and my neighbor has a chotzer, I can carry my chotzer and the neighbor can carry his chotzer, even though they have a pesach between the 2 chetzeres. But if there's no pesach, the whole wall falls down, there's no chetzeres. Then in order to be able to carry the chotzer, we need to have an eruv. So here we have this. As far as the ketana is concerned, there's no pesach there because the whole wall was fallen down. As far as the gedola is concerned, there is a pesach there because it's much larger than the area which where it connects with the ketana. So what's the din? Gedola muteres. The gedola is muter, and because it has a all four mechitzas. Or ketana asura. Because it's also because it's like completely open to the god. Since it's completely open, it has no mechitzah between that and the god. It has no mechitzah, so therefore it needs an area. So therefore, this concept of the concept is the same as the concept of the Mavi. And why did the Rav have to say that? We could have seen this in of this mission. So he says, I would have thought I would not have known the din. We need to tell us by Mavi more because here you say that the cotton is also needs to make an eruv, but the gadol he continue carrying because he has all mechitz all around. So the gadol is continue carrying. But I would not have known that case if it opens up to the street as well. Then I would not have known, because when it opens up to the street, many people are actually going to be walking through from the street straight through all the way to the into the Mavi. And therefore, I would have thought that people walking straight from the street into the Mavi, because of this opening, that would make it even the chotzer needs to have some tikkun. So I have to say, even a chotzer, you're not allowed to carry that unless you make it tikkun. You can make it also on the chotzer. So therefore, so the mission is not sufficient. So the Gemara says, 1 second, We also learned that in the Brisa. No, we would know. You do it. It's not a chiddush. We've learned this. A chotzer that many people they walk in for one end of the chotzer and go out for the other end of the chotzer. But it's a chotzer with full mechitzas and everything. So Rishus Rabbim with Tuma. So regarding Tuma, the dinam of Tuma is considered Rishus Rabbim concerning Sofik. Sofik the Tuma Rishus Rabbim is Torah. So it's considered Rishus Rabbim because you have many people walk through. But nevertheless, when it gets to Shabbos, since it has four mechitzas, Rishus Yochid the Shabbos. As far as Shabbos is Rishus Yochid. So therefore, so we learned this already. So it's again, this is not a big chiddush. We went through the price. So Gemara says no. So there the thought that this case of the chotzer with this brisa is speaking about when the breaks are not opposite each other. So therefore, okay, people walk through, but it's not a direct. The two breaks of the walls of the chotzer are not directly opposite each other. So then, since they're not directly opposite each other, so therefore it's called the Rishus Yochid Shabbos. But if it's directly opposite each other, then I thought maybe it's not allowed. Even the chotzer. Even though it has the mechitzas, it would not be those. I was zekeneged there, ema loy. So therefore we need the din of Rab to tell us it's permitted, even the zekeneged there, which just fits in with what Rav Yosef said before earlier on the page. So the Gemara says, "The Rab Omer zekeneged there also had the Rab b'maimuk the zekeneged there is tati lomali." He says, okay, according to Rabbi, when he doesn't agree with this, he says that if it's opposite each other, you're not allowed to carry. Even Rabbi agrees you're not allowed to carry if the brakes are opposite each other. And Rabbi is only mad if the brakes are not opposite each other. So he says, so why do you need the din of Rabbi? You can learn it out from the prices. Because if it say only the brisa, I would say because there there's no Rishus Rabbim involved over there. It's Rishus Yochid, another Rishus Yochid. So it tells you about. So I understand it has a. I would have thought that it has a din of Rishus Yochid. I understand it has a din of Rishus Yochid, but I would not know that. Even though it has a din of Rishus Yochid, I thought maybe we should be machmir that you're not allowed to carry it since it's open to Rishus Rabbim. Since it's open to Rishus Rabbim, and the other end there is also Rishus Rabbim. And I thought, what? But okay, even though it is a Rishus Yochid, like we see from the din of the Chatzeres that it is a Rishus Yochid, but a din from the Brisa it says Rishus Yochid Shabbos. So even though it's a Rishus Yochid Shabbos, but you still, if you throw something from the Rishus Yochid, you take it b'chayev because we say in the Brisa it's Rishus Yochid Shabbos. But maybe we should be machmir and not to carry it. So that's why the chiddush of Rabbi is even permitted to carry.